You need to know these red flags to watch out for. The warning signs of maybe not the right place for women before you join, during your first few sessions, and after you've got home. And I'll also share some things that people might think are red flags that actually aren't. So before you go, have a look at the photos. Are there women in the photos? If not, bit of a red flag. If there are women in the photos, but almost entirely women in strangely provocative positions, also a red flag. Yeah. Also, if they've used photos of women in unflattering positions, that is also a red flag. You want your gym to be somewhere that not only respects and has women there, but that understands what might bother them. And all of these are from personal experience that I have seen in the world of jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Look at the language used on the website. Is it all he, him, his? Does it talk about the boys and the lads? If the language isn't inclusive, that tells you something about the underlying ethos of the club. They might be a bit stuck in the past. Check on the website to see if there is like a safeguarding lead or safeguarding policy. This might sound a bit over the top and technical, but hear me out. All the clubs in BJJ and elsewhere in martial arts that I have trained with that are the best in terms of inclusivity have a safeguarding lead and a safeguarding policy. As a woman in martial arts, you have a right to know who is the person to go to if you've got a worry. And I hate to say it, but white gis only is a red flag before you've even walked through the door. Despite the fact that, yeah, it's, you know, it's a traditional look that some people like to lean into, having white gis only is a red flag for girls in their teens, people with endometriosis, polycystic ovary. It puts you at a disadvantage. White gis are not women friendly to a lot of women. It actually causes a lot of stress that can be so easily avoided by having darker coloured gis. And in a less biological way and just a comfort way as well, a lot of women don't want to be wearing white. And yeah, that's a social construct bodies thing, but it's still a thing. Gyms that are the most inclusive to women don't tend to have a white gi only policy. They just don't. When you get there, make sure that there are women only changing rooms. There should ideally be separate women's and men's bathroom, and the women's bathroom should have a bin in it. If it doesn't, the likelihood is not a lot of women have been using that bathroom, or not a lot of men have been listening to what they say in terms of feedback on the practicalities of that bathroom. Approaching the class, you want to see senior female members. Is it because there's an underlying sort of toxicity thing that's meant that the women have left before they've got to that point? Or is it because the women aren't being promoted at the same rate as the men, so once they're getting to a certain level they're leaving? It's a concern. Sure, at some point there needs to be the first woman to get it, and that could be you, right? But it's still something to be aware of. A lack of a safety talk is a really big red flag, and of course a lot of these things apply to men and women, but particularly when you're in a woman in a martial arts situation, there should be a safety talk when you start about consent, about who it's okay to roll with. It should be made really clear to you that you are not required to roll with anyone that you don't feel comfortable with at any time for any reason, and that tapping is not the reserve of being submitted. You can start a roll with someone, they make you feel uncomfortable, you can tap out and leave that situation. That's me done, you can say. You don't even have to say fuck off, you weirdo. You can be innocuous about it and go, oh, my back's pulling a bit, and make an excuse, but you have a right to not be in a situation you're uncomfortable with, and there should be a safety talk about that at the beginning, and no one should touch you without your consent. Yes, this is a very intimate and close hobby, but even blokes that I've been training jiu-jitsu with for nearly 2 years now ask for my permission before they touch my body or move it around. If I'm drilling with somebody and I'm in the wrong place, one of the more senior belts will come up and they'll be like, do you mind if I just move your leg over here, kind of thing. No one should be invading your personal space without your permission. Massive red flag. A lack of help with partner selection is another red flag. Now, it might be that you very naturally integrate, you find an appropriate person to train with, they don't need to get involved. But if you spend time in that class feeling at a loose end, not really knowing who to go to, and no one senior is taking over and going, hey, you can train with Amy, she's good with beginners, or you can train with Phil if you want to. There should be some help with partner selection if you need it. And if you feel at some point like you're standing there not really knowing what to do with yourself and who to talk to, and no one's intervening, that's another red flag. And after the session, it's really important to remember that professional boundaries should be boundaries. So it's such a lovely thing to have a great community, and that is one of the massive benefits of BJJ. However, if anyone approaches you, is to push you with you on social media, particularly if the coach starts direct messaging you, anything like that, that is another red flag about club culture. Being added into a group chat for the thing, that's all friendly and nice, but just be really hyper aware about people's social boundaries and anyone who's trying to push more than they should in that context. And finally, if you got to the end of your session and you raised any questions or concerns and you felt like they were dismissed or glossed over as boys will be boys or that kind of nonsense, walk away. That's not a red flag, that's a screaming siren. In the context of something that is so physical like martial arts is, people should always listen to you. And now beginners ask really random questions, and I see this a lot in HEMA, right? I've been asked some crazy things over the years, and I like to think and I hope that every time I approached my response to that sensitively and considering their concerns and queries fully, regardless of how my extra knowledge of the situation made that question feel. You should never be made to feel, if you raise questions, particularly concerns, by anyone in seniority in the class, like you're being a problem. You're not a problem, and if they make you feel like that, walk away. There are a lot of other jiu-jitsu gyms. And finally, a couple of things that seem like red flags that actually maybe aren't, and I think they're really worth mentioning here. The first one is being the only woman. Now, we talked about this a bit with like senior color belts and stuff. It's worth mentioning again. This is a male-dominated hobby, particularly at this point. I am loving seeing more women join in and get involved, but we are a smaller percentage. Therefore, if the club is a numerically smaller club, there will be fewer women, and you will be the only woman in the room sometimes. That does not automatically mean there's a problem. If this is consistent, if you never get other women sticking around, then it's time to raise some questions, particularly if the numbers go up but the proportion of women goes down. However, in a small group, being the only woman there is not a massive red flag, just something to be aware of. The other thing that I think is really important to mention with this is partner training size and partner selection. So if you're new at a club, your coach will hopefully try and find you a partner that they will match in terms of them being more experienced, calm and controlled. And you might not find that they are someone who is a similar size to you. Size doesn't equal safety, particularly when one of you's a woman and the other one's a man. I train in what is widely known as being a big man's gym, right? I'm a tall woman, and it's a gym full of quite big guys, okay? The training partners that I feel the safest to train with are not the ones that match me in terms of volume. They are the ones that understand the disparity in our size and train safely and respectfully with me. In a room full of people, I will go to the 110 kilo guy who I know is going to treat me safely and respectfully when we drill together, before I will go to the 75 kilo jacked up white belt steroid guy, okay? Size doesn't necessarily equate to safety. Obviously, this is completely different when you get into competitions when everyone's just taken off their brakes and they're going for it. But in a drilling training situation, particularly if it's like one of your first sessions, if the coach is like, this is the safe person for you to train with, and you're like, they're a lot bigger than me, remember that you can always refuse, tap out, stop at any time. But also, just because that person's larger than you doesn't mean that they're not going to be the safest training option. And when we do get new women through the doors, I can give them a short list of the men who are going to treat them carefully and respectfully, and they aren't always the smallest men. So I hope that that is useful information for you. I hope you didn't find it off-putting. Yeah, these things are red flags, and individually some of them are things that can be changed or looked over. They don't necessarily mean just leave the gym straight away. They're just things to be aware of when you're picking a new gym. Let me know, are you happy where you train? Are you thinking about starting to train? What are your views on the biggest red flags for women when it comes to BJJ gyms? I'd love to hear them. Let's chat in the comments section below, and I can't wait to see you there. And remember, it's meant to be fun, and it's not gonna be fun if you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. So let's get a great environment to train in and have fun with it.